श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रम् धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणम् वन्दे रम्यजामातरम् मुनिम् लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भाम् नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् यो नित्यम् अच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणम् प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः।
श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रम् धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणम् वन्दे रम्यजामातरम् मुनिम् यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणम् प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः. So we continue with the exposition of the Gaya Prakarana. The first sutra is a very long sutra. Explains the important characteristics and qualities that a true Vaishnava should mandatorily possess. And from today's point of view, most of these are extremely difficult to have. But we have to start somewhere, and we have to start also to sustain what we have started. Many a times, it's the nature of human beings that we start something with great enthusiasm. And by the next day, half of the enthusiasm will be gone. And by after 4 or 5 days, especially with regard to spiritual practices, we would have even forgotten what we have started or what we wanted to do. I am speaking out of my experience and not with regard to anyone else's. So I can safely say that this is the problem that I have been encountering with myself. Because he says, Puram Mundana Pattakkalai Adaya Vasanayode Vidahim, etc. So along with the vasanas, you have to give up all the yearnings for worldly pleasures. This itself is easier said than done, because it takes several decades or even several lifetimes, we can say, for this to happen. Though we want to give up something, we may not be able to give it up so easily. So to give up, for example, Jnanam, Viraktiyam, Shantiyam, Mudena, Irukkum, Paramasatvikanode, Sahavasam Pannuhim, to have constant relationship with a great sattvic person who has jnana, bhakti and vairagya. These three qualities are very rare to combine in human beings. So where do you find such a person so that you can actually have some good relationship with him? It's very, very difficult. Anyway, so it is to suffice, it says that you start in imbibing, you start to try to imbibe these qualities within yourself and then see how it goes. So these are the basic qualities a person should have if he has to be called a Vaishnava. And also, he should actually engage, having had these three qualities, he should engage in the Rahasya Traya, or the three Rahasyas, namely Jaya Mantra, Dvaya and Karamashloka. That's what he says in the second sutra. Inda Vaishnavadhikvakarik Kavashyapekshitam. This is how the first sutra ends. Inda Adhikarikye Rahasyatremam Manusandheyam. So such a person, that is to be underlined, such a person should constantly engage in the chanting, mental, outward, inward, mentally, etc. So we call japa as of three types: Uchchaihi, Upamshu, and Nichaihi. I think I have explained it sometime in the previous classes. Uchchaihi is in a way that everybody can hear or listen to it. Upamshu is, so you see the lip movement. Vachika is different because Vachika means all these three come under Vachika only. Vachika means, yes, no, it's not the correct word. It's not correct to say marmari. Vachika is marmari. Because Vachika means that which is done by means of speech. So all these three are Vachika only, except for Manasa. Uchchaihi and Upamshu are Vachika. Manasa is not Vachika. So Vachika means that is that which is done with the help of Vak or the means of speech. So Manasa does not involve Vachika, that is totally different. Because it is done purely mentally only. It doesn't involve to put it in a very physical sense, it does not involve the speech organs, like gutturals, palatals, linguals, labials, etc. So murmuring it has a slightly derogatory shade of meaning. So murmuring is not the right word to say upamshu. Upamshu means you see the lip movement. Even murmuring, I think, is it's an incorrect word. Something like whispering. Upamshu is, you can listen to it yourself, but nobody else can listen. They should be able to, they will see only the lip movement. Like that, they will see the lip movement, but they will not listen to the word or the speech that is being pronounced. And then Manasa. So, whichever way the japa is done, to do before Anusandhana is what? Punah punaha abhyasaha anusandhana. The definition of the word Anusandhanam is given as repeated chanting of some form of a mantra is known as Anusandhana. So it's not like once I say Om Namo Narayanaya and leave it. You keep on saying. That's what is known as Anusandhana. So Inda Adhikariki, such a Sri Vaishnava, such a person has to engage in all the three rahasyas. So this is very well commented upon by Swami Manavada Mavani when he says, Ippadi irikkum ivanukku anusandhana vishayam vahut arulichaihirar. He divides and explains. Inda ennu thodangi adavade கீழ் சொன்ன ஆகாரங்களை உடையனாயிருக்கும் இவ்வதிகாரிக்கு. So even if a person has to start engaging in these three rahasyas, it is mandatory for him to possess all these qualities. Is it possible today? Almost impossible, but that doesn't mean that you should not try, you should try. Because, for example, if we take, I have not come across a person except for one or two great souls who have given up the yearning for pleasures, worldly pleasures, totally. Even if you want to have some very tasty sakara pongal or puliyogare, that is also a yearning only. Of course, when it is partaken as a purely from the point of view that it is a prasadam, then it is fine. But if he yearns for it that it is so sweet and so delicious, then it becomes a yearning, or you satisfy, it is being partaken for satisfying the taste buds. So you have to be very careful. That's why it's very difficult. கீழ் சொன்ன ஆகாரங்களில் உடையனாயிருக்கும் இவ்வதிகாரிக்கு அந்த ஞானானுஷ்டானங்களுக்கு வர்த்தகமான ரகசியத்ரேமும் அனுசந்தான விஷயம் ஆக வேணும் என்கை. So when a person is qualified with all these qualifications, then he should actually engage in these three rahasyas. Why? The reason is andajnananushtanangalukku vardhakamaha. These rahasyas are the continuous chanting and japa of these rahasyas enhance the jnana and anusthana. So in the Sri Vaishnava lore, two important aspects are highlighted very frequently and prominently. They are jnana and anusthana. Jnana is you have to have the necessary knowledge of the divine, of the Supreme Brahman. And your anusthana or the whatever you perform, it should be according to your jnana. Many times, if a person is a highly knowledgeable person, but he does not put what he preaches into practice, he say he preaches but doesn't practice. And in case of some people, very rarely we say he practices but he will never preach. In very rare cases. But Swami Manavana Mamuni says in his Upadesha Ratnamala, he says, Jnanam Anuttanam Ivai Nandrahave Udayanana Guruvai Adaindakka. He explains the greatness of an Acharya who has jnana, that is the knowledge of the divine Supreme Lord, and also his anusthana or his behavior, his activities, etc., are all in accordance with the jnana or the knowledge of the divine that he has acquired. If you beseech such a guru, then you need not do anything at all. That itself will bring you Vaikuntha. He says, Jnanam Anuttanam Ivai Nandrahave Udayanana Guruva Edaindakkal Maninathir Tenar Kamalat Tirima Mahal Kodunan Tane Vaihundam Tarum. So that itself is enough. If you have beseeched an Acharya who has had the vision of the Supreme Lord, who has seen the Supreme Lord, as we call it, or Bhagavad Sakshatkara as we call it, and then his behavior is also according to his knowledge, then you need not do anything. Just you have to be with him. There is a very interesting anecdote in the Sri Vaishnava faith, Sri Vaishnava tradition. So there was a great Acharya called Nanjiyar who succeeded Parashara Bhattar. So as we all know, two branches of Acharyas. So Ramanujacharya, then Embar, Bhattar, Nanjiyar, Nambillai, etc. So after Ramanujacharya came Embar, who was his cousin, and from him Swami Parashara Bhattar took over. Great souls, all of them. Great souls is an understatement. For want of a better word, I am using that statement. And Parashara Bhattar was succeeded by the great Namjiyar, our own Jiyar or our own. So in Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, the sannyasis are called as Jiyars. So this Nanjiyar, he originally belonged to the Advaita sect. And in the Advaitins, yes, he was known as Vedanti also, of course. And in the Advaitins, though they actually preach Naishkarmya, always they are engaged in some puja or the other. My Acharya, who used to have an Advaita sannyasi as his student, a monk who was follower of the Advaita tradition, he used to jokingly tell his student, so in Advaita, and that student who is even now he is heading a great mutt or monastery. So he starts his puja at 4 o'clock in the morning and goes on till 10:30. Then once again he will engage in puja for 4 or 5 hours in the afternoon or evening. And when my Acharya used to go there to teach, he would be free only after 10 o'clock for 1 hour. That's all. All other times he would be engaged in some puja or some ritual. So my Acharya jokingly remarked, so you people belong to the Advaita tradition. And in Advaita tradition, Naishkarmya is one of the most important aspects. But Naishkarmya means it says that you should desist from performing karma at all of any sort. You should not perform karmas at all. So, but what has happened is you engage in karma from morning to night. Whereas in the Vishishtadvaita tradition, we say that you should never give up karma. That is why Ramanujacharya, before he attained the divine abode of Vaikuntha, even on the day, he was 120 years old. And you can imagine how brittle the Divya Mangala Vigraha of Ramanujacharya could have been. Because 120 years is not an ordinary thing. We see people who are 100 years old, or 95, 96, 98. Our own Acharya who was 99 before he attained the divine abode. So they become so weak. The body becomes so weak. So he could not even, Ramanujacharya could not even join his hands to do the Arghya Pradana as part of Sandhya Vandana. So on the day he attained, even on the day he attained the divine abode of the Lord, Ramanujacharya called his disciples and helped him join his hands like this so that he could do the Arghya Pradana. That's what tradition says. So the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya says you should never give up karma, even if you have had the Sakshatkara of the Supreme Lord, it should all be done as Bhagavat Kainkariya or Bhagavat Preetya. So my Acharya said it's ironical. Those who preach Naishkarmya are always engaged in karma. Whereas Sri Vaishnava Sannyasis, they do some puja, of course. They may do very elaborately also, but not for 5 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours, etc. So though we say that you should never give up karma, we actually are not interested in karma so much as you people are. So it's ironical, he used to say, see how every tradition follows the opposite of what is preached. He used to jokingly say. Therefore it says here that why I mentioned this is that Jnanam Anuttanam Ivai Nandrahave Udayana. You should not preach what you don't practice, and you should not practice what you don't preach. And once again, there is an anecdote that is mentioned also in the traditional discourses. Once there was a great Upanyasaka, person who was expert in giving discourses. So one day he was talking about Ekadashi Mahatmya, the greatness of Ekadashi. So several thousands of people are gathered there. And then he wonderfully gave an exposition of what all is to be done and what all is the do's and don'ts of the Ekadashi Vrata. And then he told as part of Ekadashi Vrata, one should not consume brinjals. So certain, of course, you should do Nirjala Upavasa, that is what we call as the Mukhya Paksha. Mukhya Paksha is the original rule is you should not engage in partaking any meal at all, whether it is in the form of liquids or solids. And you should even avoid water if possible, drinking water. But some people cannot do that, they engage in drinking water. Some people have phalahara, that is fruits. Some people actually have some dishes that are prepared without using rice. So these are all the pariyayas of the second, third, fourth options. But in any case, brinjal is definitely be avoided on Ekadashi day. That's what he highlighted with several facts. And from the point of view of Ayurveda also, it's very important. Let us not worry about it now. Then after some time, he went home. The person who was giving the discourses, he went home. And it seems that his wife had prepared very, very delicious curry using brinjals. And then he was having lunch, and this brinjal curry was served to him. So in India, in South India, there is a very wonderful tradition of preparing brinjal curry. Very, very tasty. Then suddenly one of the disciples who was listening to the discourse earlier that day, he came home. Then he said, please come and... so he was having lunch. And he said, see how wonderfully my wife has prepared brinjal curry. Then immediately, sir, the disciple asked, sir, may I ask a question, if you permit? Yeah, ask, go ahead. This person who was who was giving the discourse, was a very jovial person, and also he was not short-tempered. So you please go ahead, he said. Then the disciple asked, sir, today morning you gave 2-3 hours earlier, you gave a wonderful discourse about Ekadashi Mahatmya. And you said that brinjal should never be partaken on Ekadashi. But now you are taking brinjal curry. Is it right on your part? Then he said, in Kannada they say, Purana hellikke banne kai tinnat. See, Ekadashi Mahatmya is explained in the Puranas, and I was explaining it to him. What are the Puranas there for? They are there to be explained or to be given as discourses. And what is brinjal here for? It is there for to be eaten by people like us. So what's the relationship between giving a discourse and eating it? So Purana is there for being discoursed or being explained. Brinjal curry is here for being eaten. So I will eat it, and he relished it more and started eating it. So 99% of the times, this is what we all do. That is why there is a shloka in Sanskrit. It says, Paropadesha samaye sarve vyasa parashara. Swanusthana samaye munayo api napandita. When we want to instruct others or when we want to explain something to others, we think we are Vyasa Maharshi or Parashara Maharshi. But when it comes to practicing what is preached, even the sages find it difficult to practice what they have preached in the perfect manner. So it's a very, very difficult thing. That is why Manavala Mamani says, Andajnana Anushtanangalakku Vardhakamana. So the Jnana Anushtana should be according to the Jnana. The performance should be according to what he knows. He should never engage in a practice that is against the enjoyment of the Supreme Lord. If he does it, then automatically the Lord will give him up. Vardhakamana rahasyatremam manusandhana vishayamaha venum. So he should constantly chant the rahasya prayers. Then he says, Yalla pramanangalilum dehattare perengiradip. Tirumantrattil atmavale perengiradip. Tirumashlokattil ishwaravale perengiradip. Tvayattil Periyapirattyarale perengiradip. So here, Pillalokacharya uses the word per. That means what is the most important factor that contributes to attaining the fruit or the results. For example, if a person has to prepare a pot, several items have to be there. He has to have clay, then he has to have chakra, that is the potter's wheel. Then he has to have a staff to actually rotate the wheel. Then he has to have water. Then potter should be there. So he needs so many implements. But which is the most important factor that contributes to the production of a pot? The most important factor is you should have clay. If you don't have clay, how can you actually produce a pot? So similarly here he says, Ella pramanangalinum dehattale perengirade. So which is the most important factor that contributes to attaining the result? So for all the pramanas, that is the shastras, the main aspect is the body. Without the body, you cannot perform anything. That is why it is, Kalidasa says in his Shakuntala or some other work, he says, Shariramadhyam kalu dharma sadhanam. The first and most important aspect is the body. The reason why the parents, that is the mother and father, are worshipped as God is that they bestow the body to the human, to an Atma. But which Atma is to be bestowed with which body, nobody has control except for the Supreme Lord himself. But to give a body to an Atma is a great, great, great thing. And the Supreme Lord himself is created with the greatness or liberty to give a body to an Atma. That's why Vedanta Deshika says, Achid avishishtan jantu navalokya pralaye jata nirvedaha karana kadebara yogam vitarasi vrishashailanatha karune. He personifies daya or compassion of the Supreme Lord as a Devi, as a consort of the Lord. And he says, he has authored a beautiful work called Daya Shataka, where he glorifies the greatness of the compassion of the Lord by personifying the quality of compassion as a consort of the Lord. And he says, O Daya Devi, O Goddess Daya, or O Goddess Compassion, due to your insistence only, all the Jivatmas or all the individual souls which did not have the body and the Indriyas, that is Karana and Kalebara, it's called. Karana means the Indriyas and Kalebara means the body. So it is only due to your insistence that all these Jivatmas have come to have a body and the sense organs. What for has this been given to us? It has been given to us for having the Sakshatkara or the Darshana of the Supreme Lord. The main intention of this body and the Indriyas are that only. We have, unfortunately, all of us have lost this realization, or this realization has not dawned upon us. So the main intention, so we are using this body to enjoy the sensual pleasures. That should be incidental. So yearning for the Sakshatkara of the Supreme Lord should be the main aim of all of us. Whereas now it is totally opposite. So having yearning for such a thing does not even exist on our agenda. We are engaged in enjoying the worldly pleasures only and nothing more than that. That is the main problem. So this body is being misused and abused to the maximum possible extent by all of us. But ultimately, we have to realize that this body is there for having the Sakshatkara of the Supreme Lord, having the vision of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, it is said that, and for that you have to perform, according to the Shastras, you have to perform Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, etc. And even for Prapatti, you need the body. Without the body, how can you perform Prapatti? Whether it is as a separate event or inbuilt, embedded in the Samashanam or whatever you call it. You need to have a body, because unless the body is there, you cannot have the Sankachakrankana, according to Sri Vaishnava philosophy. So for all the Pramanas, all the Shastras, whether it is Sankhya, Yoga, or Mimamsa, Uttara Mimamsa, Purva Mimamsa, or even the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, which is part of the Veda, which is the practical aspect of Vedanta philosophy. Ella Pramanangalim Dehattare Perengiradhi. The body is the most important factor to attain the Purusharthas. Without body, nothing can happen. So he says, Ella Pramanangalim Dehattare Perengiradhi. This is well explained by Swami Madhavanandam. Ini dvayatil cholluhira arthattin veerudamayai arivikkaha. So to explain the greatness of the meaning of the Dvaya Prakarana, Shastram, Tirumantram, Charamashtlokam, Ivattil Cholluhira Prakarangalai Arulichai Kundu, Shendre, Pinnai Aradannai Arulichai Hirar. So to explain the greatness of the Jaya Mantra, it is known as the Mantra Ratna, he gives a contrast of the main factors that contribute to attaining the results of the Shastras, Tirumantra, Charamashloka. And then he comes to highlight the most important factor that makes the Jaya Mantra meaningful and result-oriented. So he says, first he says how the Shastras give results. What is the main factor behind the Shastras giving the result? It is the Deha, or the physical body. Then, Adavade Chetananudiya Vishishtaveshattile Nokkana Sakala Shastrangalilum. So all the Shastras are aimed. What is the target audience of the Shastras? Many a times when a book is written or when a discourse is given, when somebody asks me to talk about something, I ask, who is the target audience? Of which background are they? Because unless you know the background of the listeners, how can you talk to them? Suppose I am asked to give a discourse to people who are from theoretical physics. What will I talk to them? Or suppose a theoretical physicist is asked to give a discourse to people from literature. How will he talk to them? Because there is no meeting point. Therefore, the first thing that is to be identified is who is the target audience. That is known as adhikari in Sanskrit, in the Shastras. So to whom are you addressing this work? So it says, Adavade Chetananudiya Vishishtaveshattile Nokkana Sakala Shastrangalilum Sadhananushtana Yogyamana Dehattale Ivanikka Purushartha Labham. So all the Shastras are aimed at a human being consisting of a body and an Atma. That's what he says, Vishishtaveshattile. So you can say it is targeted towards an Atma who is possessing a body invariably. Because without body he cannot do anything. It is true for all the four, whether it is Shastras, it is for Trimantra, Dvaya, Charamashloka, etc. But the important factor changes. The importance changes. So, sadhakamana yogyata, sadhananusthana yogyamana dehattale ivanikka purushartha labham. So, if he has a body that cooperates, then by that body, by means of that body, which is possessing an Atma or individual soul, he will attain the Purushartha, he will attain fulfillment. This is as far as Shastras in general are concerned. Then, Tirumantrattil Atma Vale Perengiradhi. As far as Tirumantra is concerned. Nishkrishtaveshattile nokkana Tirumantratil. Even Swarakshana. So the Tirumantra, all the Shastras also are aimed at helping the individual soul to attain moksha or fulfillment. But Tirumantra is a highly specialized, if you put it in the modern technical terminology, we can call it as a special purpose vehicle. They call it as SPV. It's a special purpose vehicle which will help you attain moksha very easily, relatively very easily. I would like to add relatively to that. So he says, Nishkrishtave Shattile Nokkana Tirumantratil. Tirumantra is aimed or targeted at a what you call in business terms niche audience or niche group of persons who want to attain liberation. Many times these corporate terminologies help us understand several concepts in an easy manner, in English. So you call it, you have a niche group of consumers, NICHE. So that's why it says, Nishkrishtaveshattile nokkana Tirumantratil. Even Swarakshanattil nindrum kaivangi. Swarakshanattil nindrum kaivangi. Kaivanginal Vodiya Ishwaranudiya Rakshakatvam Jivyamiyane the Pravritti Virodhyana Swapravartye Vittirukkum Atmavale Purushartha Labham. The method in which the Tirumantra bestows Purushartha or Moksha is by means of the Atma. The Atma is the most important factor. The individual soul is the most important factor. But not an ordinary individual soul, but a highly qualified individual soul. Highly decorated individual soul. What are the qualifications that he requires? That is not explained by Pilladokacharya in a very detailed manner. That is why it is being explained by Swami Manavana Mamuni. See how beautifully he explains the hidden meanings. Even Swarakshanattil nindrum kaivanginalodiya Ishwaranudiya Rakshakatvam Jivyameyade Tat Pravritti Virodhyana Swapravartye Vittirukkum Atmavale Purushartha Labham. So the Jivatma is the most important factor in Tirumantra helping him attain liberation or moksha. What type of Jivatma? He should have withdrawn from the idea or from the thought that I can protect myself. Swarakshanattil nindrum kaivangi. He should have totally given up any effort that he may make. Of course, none of us make such an effort at all. He may have, I can protect myself, I don't need anybody else to do it. That is the Jnana Marga actually. So that is why we compare the Jnana Marga and Bhakti Marga. I think I have explained it in sufficient detail in an earlier discourse. So the Jnana Marga is akin to what is known as the Markata Kishora Nyaya. That is the analogy of the young one of a monkey. And the Bhakti Marga is akin to the Marjara Kishora Nyaya, or the analogy of the kitten that is protected by its mother cat. So in the Markata Kishora Nyaya, the young monkey, it actually embraces its mother like this. So the mother has no control over the young one. So even when the mother monkey jumps from one branch of a tree to another, the young one has to very tightly clasp the stomach of its mother. In case it falls down, the mother has no control over it. So that is Jnana Marga, where a person thinks I can attain moksha on my own efforts or of my own efforts, due to my own efforts. Whereas Marjara Kishoranyaya is where the Jivatma just gives him the young kitten, which is shifted frequently by the mother cat, because it is a natural phenomenon that the male cat, as soon as it knows that it has the cat has given birth, the female cat has given birth to some kittens, it will kill them. So this happens among lions and many other animals, because it is the law of nature that there should not be inbreeding, etc. That's a totally different. The theory of genetics and the law of nature comes into play. We are not interested in that. So the mother cat frequently shifts the kittens from one place to other by actually catching them with its teeth and taking it from one place to other. The cat does not have any responsibility. The kitten does not have any responsibility of protecting itself. So the onus of protecting the young one rests with the mother. So this is Bhakti Marga. So here he says, Swarakshanatthil nindrin kaivanginalodiya. If I think that I will protect myself, the Ishvara, Supreme Lord, will not come to protect me. Because if I think that I cannot protect myself and surrender to the Supreme Lord, then Ishvaranude Rakshakatvam Jiviyameyane. Then the Supreme Lord becomes the protector. He will don the role of a protector. There is a very beautiful story in this regard that is narrated by a great soul of India. So once in Vaikuntha, Lord Narayana was being served by Goddess Mahalakshmi. So she was doing what we call as Pada Seva. She was massaging his feet. Then suddenly, all of a sudden, without even giving a notice of a moment, the Supreme Lord ran very fast. Then Goddess Mahalakshmi was perturbed. What happened? Then within few seconds, he returned back. And he said, now I am going to take rest once again. You can continue your Pada Seva, you can continue to nurse my legs, my feet, divine feet. Then Goddess Mahalakshmi, naturally anybody would be curious to know what happened. Then she asked, what happened? Why did you all of a sudden run so fast? Then Lord Narayana, it seems, said, no, what happened was in the Bhuloka, a Shrotriya, a Sri Vaishnava, was actually passing through a street which was full of people from other religions. I don't want to name the religion in a public forum. So those who tell that people they belong to the religion that says that all people belonging to other religions should be killed or something like that. So you can understand which religion it is. So he was passing through that street, which was full of people who belonged to other religions, and they tried to abuse him and also hurt him physically. Then immediately that Sri Vaishnava said, oh Narayana, oh Lord Narayana, please protect me, please protect me. Then when he said that, I could not do anything but run so fast. And that's why I went so urgently. Then Goddess Mahalakshmi, okay, did you protect him? What happened afterwards? Why did you come back so fast? No, there was no need for that to happen. That's what Lord Narayana said. Then Goddess asked, why? No, when the Sri Vaishnava called, oh Lord Narayana, please protect me, I went so fast But within the fraction of a second that I could go, that Sri Vaishnava also had taken a stone in his hand and he was about to hit his, his abusers. So when he was about to when he took the stone in his hand and he was about to hit it at them, I thought, there is no job for me here. So he has taken it upon himself to protect himself. So then I have no work to do. That's why I came back so fast. And now I am back to my original position. So that's why it says, Swarakshanattil Swanmayam Kudadi. If I think I can protect myself, the Supreme Lord will not do it. This is the law of nature, because even in the Ramayana, when in the Sundarakanda, when Indrajit actually attacks Hanuman, he binds him with the Brahmastra. But when the Brahmastra, after he is bound by the Brahmastra, the Rakshasas, who are fools, they try to once again bind Hanuman with ropes, ordinary ropes. Then immediately the Brahmastra became loose and he became totally free. And he was bound by the ordinary ropes. Astrabandha Sachanyam hi nabandha manuvartate. That's what Ramayana Valmiki very beautifully says. When he is bound by the Brahmastra, nobody can actually free him. But the Rakshasas, who are fools, they tried one more rope, and suddenly this rope, the Brahmastra, the binding of the Brahmastra automatically loosened and he became free. So when you have approached the higher authority when you have asked for a favor, and when you actually do this approach a lower authority, then the higher authority will say, okay, you get the work done from him only, I am not interested. This is the law of nature. So he says, unless the Jivatma withdraws his own efforts to protect himself, the Supreme Lord will actually not take over. He will not become the Rakshaka. Ishwaranuடைய Rakshakatvam Jiviyameyane. So the Rakshakatva, or to put it in a literal term, protection hood of the protector hood of the Supreme Lord will become alive or will come into play only when the Jivatma has withdrawn himself from protecting himself. Therefore, tat pravritti virodhyana swapravrittiyai. If the effort of the Supreme Lord has to succeed, the Jivatma has to withdraw his own efforts. Only when the Jivatma withdraws his own efforts, the Supreme Lord's efforts will fructify. They will come into play and fructify. Therefore, the Jivatma plays the main role in Tirumantra. What sort of Jivatma? A person who has realized that I cannot be my protector, it has to be the Supreme Lord only. And having realized that, he should desist from performing any other activity that he thinks he is aimed at protecting himself. Tat pravritti virodhyana swapravrittye vittirukkum atma vale purushartha labham ingirade. See how beautiful the philosophy is, how beautiful our sampradaya is, how beautifully it has been explained by Pillalokacharya, and further it has been described by Manavalama. I don't see any other, not to speak lowly of other sampradayas, but I don't see any other sampradaya that has so beautifully explained these concepts, especially so subtle concepts, because these are the things that one has to properly understand to become a true Sri Vaishnava. Swapravrityai vittirukkum atma vale purushartha labham. ஈஸ்வர சுவாதந்திரத்திலே நோக்கான சரமஸ்லோகத்தில் இவனுடைய ஸ்வீகாரமும் மிகையாம்படி தானே கை கொண்டு பிராப்தி பிரதிபந்தக சகல பாபங்களையும் தள்ளி புகட்டு தன் திருவடிகளிலே சேர்த்து கொள்ளும் ஈஸ்வரனாலே புருஷார்த்த லாபம் என்கிறது. So the third section of the shloka is Charama Shlokatil Ishwaranale Perengiradu. So we all know about the Charama Shloka. That is the Krishna Charama Shloka, which is the most important Charama Shloka. Of course, Rama Charama Shloka and Varaha Charama Shloka are also equally important, but in different context. So as far as the Charama Shloka is concerned, we all know that the Supreme Lord told Arjuna at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, at the end of the instruction of the Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. Give up all other sadhanas, whether it is Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and perform total surrender. Surrender totally at my feet. And I will rid you from all sins and liberate you. I will give you moksha. So this is the very roughly I am explaining the meaning of the Charama Shloka. So how does the Charama Shloka become effective in granting liberation to a Jivatma? Charama Shlokatil Ishwaranale Perengirade. The Charama Shloka highlights the Ishwara Swatantriya, the independence of the Supreme Lord. Because the Supreme Lord is not answerable to anybody. Nobody can question, how did you give liberation to such and such a soul? Because he is the Supreme Lord and he can do anything. So we call him omnipotent or Sarvashakta. So he can even liberate an insect that is fallen in a pit of mess. Or he will not do it, but he has the power to actually even not grant liberation even to the most deserving soul. But he will not do it, that's a different thing. But he has the power to do it. So he uses that power to liberate even some very ordinary being. Never will he abuse or misuse his power. Because he is the Supreme Lord who is the resting place or who is the possessor of all the Kalyana Gunas. Of course, it's very difficult to realize this thing, but that is the fact which we have to try to realize. Ishvara Swatantriyattile Nokkana Charamashlokatil Ivanudiya Svikaramam Mihayam Padi Tane Kaikundu Prapti Pratibandhaka Sakala Papangalayum Talli Pohatte தன் திருவடிகளிலே சேர்த்து கொள்ளும் ஈஸ்வரனாலே புருஷார்த்த லாபம். Here the role of the Jivatma is also unimportant. Here the role of the Sharira or the body is also unimportant. Everything is unimportant or secondary. The main factor that makes Charama Shloka give the desired result of moksha is the Supreme Lord. Because since he is omnipotent, he is Sarvashakta and he is Sarvatantra Swatantra, totally independent. Even Udiya Svikaramam Mihayam Paditane Kaikundu, he can take or undertake the responsibility of liberating the Jivatma by Prapti Pratibandhaka Sakala Papangalayum Talli Pohatti. The main reason the Jivatma doesn't attain liberation is because of his karmas, punyas and papas. So the Supreme Lord is so powerful that within one moment he can cancel all the punyas and papas of a Jivatma and accept him and grant him liberation. So the main factor that makes the Charama Shloka fruitful resultant is the Supreme Lord Himself. So the main factor for the Shastras becoming fruitful or giving their results or giving the desired results is the body. For the Tirumantra to give its result, the main factor is the Jivatma, who has realized that he himself cannot protect himself, and it is the Supreme Lord only who can protect himself, and having realized that, he should give up the efforts to do that. That is, as I explained earlier, he should not do or perform any activity that has even the inkling of, I am doing it to protect myself and I have the capacity to protect myself. If he does that, then the Tirumantra will not be useful for him at all. So a person, a Jivatma who has attained this realization only can be the main factor in Tirumantra giving its results. Whereas the Charama Shloka will give the main factor behind the Charama Shloka giving the result is the Ishvara Swatantriya, or the supremacy of the Supreme Lord, who is totally independent. And on account of his independence, so in the criminal laws of India, it says that the President of India has the power to pardon even a person who has committed heinous crimes. He may have committed hundreds of murders, hundreds of heinous crimes. But the President of India has the power to release him and say that, using my powers given by the Constitution of India, I have released him. He can do it. So it's called a clemency petition or something like that in legal language. So when the President of India, who is temporarily presiding over the destiny, not in the real sense, but in a very ordinary sense of a small portion of the earth, he can have so much of independence. Why can't the Supreme Lord, who is commanding Akhilanda Koti Brahmanda Nayaka, he says thousands and millions and crores of such galaxies, will he not have the power to pardon a person and immediately grant liberation to him? He will have it by all means. So the Supreme Lord is the main factor due to which the Purushartha or Moksha is attained, as far as the Charama Shloka is concerned. Then what about the Jaya Mantra, which we are actually talking about now? The main factor behind Jaya Mantra becoming fruitful is Jayatil Periya Piratya Rale Peringirade. It is Goddess Mahalakshmi who is the main factor in helping a Jivatma attain liberation through the Jaya Mantra, by means of the Jaya Mantra. How is it? That we will see in the next class. Thank you very much. Any questions are welcome.
Swami, you were talking about Anusandhanam in the beginning. And
Yes.
Anusandhanam, we're repeating the mantras, the Tira Mantra and the Dvaya Mantra, and perhaps even the Charma Sloka. And but it has to be, Anusandhanam means also we have to be thinking about the meaning, right? It's not just mere parroting.
Even without the meaning, because one of our Purvacharyas says, even without thinking about the meaning, if you chant it, it will, of course, give you the resultant fruits. Because the analogy given is, when a young boy who is 8 years old, in those days, of course, you will have to add the class in those days, when the Gurukula system was prevalent. So he will not know what is the meaning of Bhavati Bhikshan Dehi. They will say the young 8-year-old boy is taught by the Guru to say, go Bhavati Bhikshan Dehi, you have to just say, and go and stand in front of the house. Of a house where the lady of the house will give you alms. So does he know what is the root suffix of the word Bhavati? Does he know what Bhiksham? which case ending it is, and as you know, the grammatical details are of the word Dehi. He will just go and say Bhavati Bhiksha Dehi, he will get the alms, he will come to his ashram and partake it, and he will satiate his hunger. Similarly, even without knowing the meaning, if you tell Om Namo Narayanaya or chant the Jaya Mantra, it will grant you the fruits, the results. But it will be very meaningful if you know the meaning and then do it. That's why the Jaranagati Gadya, the Supreme Lord says, Dvayam Arthanusandhanena Saha Sada Evam Vakta. Always keep chanting the Jaya Maha Mantra along with going over the meaning in your mind. So that's why we call it as Arthanusandhana. So Shabdanusandhana is repeatedly going over the words of the mantra. And Arthanusandhana is also thinking about or contemplating, not only thinking, but contemplating upon the meaning of the mantra. So if it is done along with the contemplation of the meaning, then it is more fruitful and more fulfilling also.
And I think we asked before that there's a certain method for Tira Mantra Japam and for Dvaya Mantra Japam,
Yes.
and for Charma
different people it is mentioned as different. I have to go through it and let you know. Let me see. I'll do it sometime soon, hopefully.
So, and as far as spending time between these three mantras, and even the other mantras, the Ramacharma Sloka and Varahacharma Sloka, as far as spending time and in Anusandhana of each of them, which is given more time and which should be, what emphasis should there be?
Individual dispensation of the individual. So one person might like the Tirumantra more. We have in the beginning we have told the results of all the three mantras are the same. So one person may, so after my very, very, very limited experience, I find sometimes even though you want to chant one particular mantra, without your knowledge you chant another mantra. So whichever has more bearing on you, your thoughts, that comes to you automatically. You cannot help it. So there is a very beautiful incident, though it's not directly related to the question you have asked. I remember the incident which is mentioned in the story of Tulsidas. Tulsidas, as we know, he was a great worshipper of Lord Rama. And wherever he went, he used to sing the praises of Lord Rama. But once he actually came to visit Mathura, which is the birthplace of Lord Krishna, as we all know. So there is no difference between Rama and Krishna, because we say Raghavatse, Abhavat, Sita, Lakshmi, Krishna Janmani, and there are several hundreds of pramanas to show all are the incarnations of the Lord only. Of course, in some sampradayas we glorify Krishna more than Rama. In sometimes we glorify Lord Krishna, Lord Rama more than Krishna. So now Swami Nammadwar himself does that. When he glorifies Lord Rama, he says, don't think about the other incarnations at all. But that is what we call as Nahi Ninda Nyaya. When you see the greatness of Rama, so you can say it is nowhere near Krishna's greatness. When you see the greatness of Krishna separately, say it is nowhere near the greatness of Rama. So ultimately, it should not result in any animosity or something like that. It should be complementary and supplementary to each other. So in the Tirupavai Vyakyaram, Swami Annagracharya has very beautifully given a contrast in Sanskrit, in his Sanskrit commentary. So when Tulsidas actually went to worship in the... I will answer that question. when he went to worship in Mathura, and a group of people, devotees, went with him. So immediately the Lord gave darshan as Rama only to all the devotees who accompanied Tulsidas. And there is a beautiful saying even in Bhagavatam. Saumitre kvathanurdhanuhu iti Ramo nama babhuvaham. There is a very beautiful shloka, I don't remember that. So once when Yashoda was narrating, so they narrate stories to make children go to sleep. So once when Lord Krishna was being coaxed to sleep by Yashoda, she started telling a story that is very beautifully narrated. Ramo, Nama, Babhuva, is, oh, okay. That's what, so children, when they listen to this story. So Rama, there was a great person called Rama. He had a wife called Sita. Then Sita was abducted by Ravana. And Rama went there to bring back Sita. Immediately Krishna woke up, not fully. He said, oh, Lakshmana, bring me my bow. I want to kill Ravana immediately. So this is quoted in the Bhagavad, which says that both Rama and Krishna are one and the same, are the avatar of one and the same Lord Vishnu. Anyway, so I think I have answered your question. We have digressed, but I have. So one more question then in the chat window. So what is the requirements for I want to say Samashanam is every Acharya? No. First thing is you should want to become a Vaishnava, Sri Vaishnava. And you should honestly aspire for attaining liberation. So that is and finally it says, no, that is what we are going to see in the next sutra. If you think I am already endowed with the necessary factors that can gain me liberation, then you need not come to this. So you should have akinchanya, akinchana. I have no other qualification other than aspiring for attaining moksha. That is the first qualification. Second qualification is ananyagati. You should think that Lord Narayana alone can help you attain liberation. These are the two main qualifications or requirements. Other than that, there is no other requirement. But in this, there are so many factors that go into it. It's not as easy as said. Because you see what are the first sutra we have, which has been explained over 4 or 5 sessions. You see what are all the requirements for a true Vaishnava. But it will not come to anybody overnight, nor do I claim that I have that. We are all in the beginning of the beginning. As far as a person like me is concerned, I deem myself like that. So we have to start aspiring to have these qualifications. But 2 main things are, which is mentioned in the Dvaya Prakarana, in the immediately next sutra is Dvayataka Adhikari Akinchanyam Ananyagati. So feeling of helplessness as a shade of negativeness, but it should not be negative, it should be positive. I have exhausted all things, now I have come to you. So that you do it with great confidence. Generally, if you Keshav is absolutely right, but helplessness generally implies some sense of negativity also. So you should remove helplessness devoid of negativity and including positivity. You should be not a pessimist, with optimism it has to be. Yes, you are absolutely right. I hope I have answered your question.
Swami, again, the question. We perform Saranagati once
Are you attending this session for the first time?
Yes, yes, Swami.
Can you please give your background so that I know from where you are?
Adian was born in Chennai. I was brought up in Delhi. Right now, I'm in the US. I did my master's and I am working here. I'm in New York right now.
Your full name?
Pillai Pakkum Bavukudambi Aditya. Adiyan's Acharyan is Kovil Kandadai Suddhasattvam Annan Swamigal. Swami
So who
Adiyan,
introduced you to this class?
I was watching Keshav Das's Swami's videos on YouTube. He added me to WhatsApp groups. But right now I'm considering moving to another place. I have not been able to attend a lot of classes, but this is my first class. I'm hoping to attend all the classes going forward. But the timing does not match, unfortunately.
Anyway, they are on YouTube, so you can watch it.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, please go ahead with your question.
Swami, we perform Sharanagati once, and then because of our ignorance, we a lot of times we don't know how to react to situations and everything, and the Perumal being the abode of compassion, when a situation comes where we are in trouble, when we think that we have to do something to protect ourselves, but we have already performed Sharanagati once. In a case of a child depending on their parents, even though he doesn't feel that he needs the help of their parents, the parent still helps them because the parent knows that he is ignorant, right? But you said that in this case, if we think that we can help ourselves, and the God will not help you, can you explain that a little bit?
It's a very difficult concept to understand and also perform. It's even more difficult because now the question comes, suppose I have a headache. So if I say, oh Lord Narayana, protect me, will he protect me? Will the headache go after half an hour? A very ordinary example I am giving. Whereas if you pop in a tablet, aspirin or something like that, within 10 or 15 minutes, the headache will disappear. But whereas you do it, suppose a person is likely to get headache every week on a particular day or something like that, he can try it for 2 hours, 3 hours, the headache will not go. So this is at the ordinary level. That means we should have, if we have total faith, which is probably at the level of Nammalvar or somebody. Actually, many a times what happens, the people who will give ordinary discourses, they will not address a particular question like this. They will not raise at all the particular question. That doesn't mean that they don't know. So they will not raise because it's a very tricky answer. Or if somebody asks, have you experienced it or something like that, it will be difficult for them to say, I have not experienced. Then the question will come, if you have not experienced, how are you preaching? Or if you say, if you have experienced, how to please explain, it will be very difficult. That is why the general popular discourses, they will not raise such a question. But that stage where it comes to where you don't do anything for your protection. Suppose there is a problem, now you have to earn a living. You have to perform some task. Once again, it should be highly balanced. It should not be in Tamil they say Eda Godamana Vairagya. So my father used to beautifully say, it should not be irresponsibility which you call as Vairagya. So suppose a person has a family, he has his wife and children to feed. He will say, if God's will is there, let him do, I will not do anything. That's not correct. It's a irresponsibility. And it's not a process overnight. Today I have done Sharanagati, so from tomorrow the God will take care of all these things. So it's a highly evolved state of mind where you gradually go on meditating upon the Lord, then the functions of your functions will be taken over by the Lord. It's not overnight. I did Sharanagati, today I had Samashanam, so from tomorrow I'll leave everything. If your mind has developed to such an extent, then it might happen. That is why in none of our Sampradaya works it says Swavyaparattaivitta. I don't remember the first portion. So when he was told by his acharyas that the Supreme Lord will take care of you even if you don't do anything, he immediately left everything. All the job, some job or something, we don't call it a job in those days. Something that was fetching him some money, he left it immediately. And he said, God will take care of it. And even about 50, 60 years back, there was one professor in the Sanskrit college, Veda Pandit. I would not like to call him a professor. Due to some developments in the college, when the government made it a rule that he should teach all persons the Vedas, he will say, from tomorrow I will not do it. I will leave my job. Because I don't want to do something that is not in line with the Shastras. But he was under very, very poverty-stricken circumstances. But he said, no, I believe in the grace of Lord. So I will not do anything that is against what is in the Shastra. So I will not teach Vedas to every Tom, Dick and Harry. So this is once again cannot be mentioned in public because people may have their own views. It's against the principle of equality and things like that. There might be several questions that we will answer separately if required. But he did that. But after what happened, he was taken care of well by the Supreme. So all the people and all his colleagues, they were so, what happened? I will tell that also. All his colleagues approached the higher authorities in the government and said, please don't consider it as a resignation. You please consider it as a voluntary retirement. These are all small things in the government parlance. People in the US may not understand these things. What difference it makes? So voluntary retirement means he is eligible for some pension. So all the people, all his colleagues, they got together and ensured that he got a pension to lead his life. So this is how the Lord protects. He will not protect. So there is also a saying in the Shastras, Nadeva dandamadaya rakshanti pashurakshavad. Yam tu rakshitum icchanti sadbuddhya yojayantitam or buddhya samyojayantitam. So when you say the gods protect us, they will not, it's not as if a cowherd stands behind the cows and protects the cows with a staff in his hand. So when they have to protect somebody, they will actually give him the necessary mindset or goad him from within to do something. Many times I used to ask my guru, if suppose somebody, if a person is to be killed and a person actually stabs him or something like that, will he not lose his life if he is not destined to do so? Then my Acharya explained this sloka and he said, no, if he is destined to live, some event will happen where the person will not be able to reach that place at all where he is supposed to be stabbed. So that is how the divine forces work as far as a human being is concerned. So the more and more you have that nishtha, as I call it, the nishtha irukra variyil eppudo jaasti nishtha irukko, avladukku the Lord will take over. If it is 0.1%, he will take over that much. If it is 99%, he will take over that much. If it is 100%, he will take over. But what happens in the heart of hearts, we don't know our own level of renunciation. The God knows and he will do accordingly. That's what we deduce. So in the Mangala Shloka, we will conclude. Achedramānujetyesha chatura chaturakshari kāmavasthām prapadyante jantavo antamadrishah punyam bhoja vikāsāya pāpadvān takshayāya ca śrīmān āvirabhūt bhūmau rāmānuja divākarah nīkrita virinchāri nirankusha vibhūtayah Ramandya padam bhoja samāśrena shārinah.